What's up, YouTube? Capital G here doing a quick YCS recap, letting you guys know what the heck went on at YCS Liverpool. Haven't done one of these in a while, but I guess ever since Shining Victories, it's felt like it's pretty much just been like three major decks that have been doing really well on the YCS circuit. I guess maybe three and a half with like Mermail, but to me it feels like it's been pretty much just Metaphos, PK Fire, and then obviously like the Blue Eyes White Dragon deck. But with ABC being introduced into the meta, we obviously have another heavyweight deck. And going into Liverpool, it kind of felt to me that it was going to be ABC versus the field, because I felt like ABC was like head and shoulders better than the other decks and the other competition. Now, not surprising enough, this might come as a shock to some, but if you know about the European culture and how they do things, ABC did not win this event. And I say that's not a shock because like there has just been a love affair with Burning Abyss in Europe. They love Burning Abyss. They will never ever give that deck up, and it actually ended up winning the event. It was a super spicy teched out PK Fire deck. I'm going to show you guys that deck in a minute, and we'll just go over some of the techs and stuff like that and why he was so successful. But PK Fire actually squared off against Minerva Sworn, a deck that has just become incredibly popular. I really feel like Minerva Sworn would be a lot more represented in the meta if anyone just had access to the card. I mean, it's still, I believe on the open market, Minerva is still like $500 for just a super rare. So it's not a card that anyone considers to be accessible to pretty much like the entire Yu-Gi-Oh population. Excuse me. But I don't think that that should lead you to believe that ABC is still not the best deck, the fact that it didn't win. Because if you look at the numbers, the top 32 breakdown, like ABC had more in top 32 than Lightsworn, PK Fire, Metaphos, and Mermail combined. So obviously Metaphos, I mean, it took up almost half of the top 32. Now this isn't, you know, Performages and Friends. Like this isn't those type of numbers where at YCS Atlanta it had like 30 out of 32, which was like, all right, emergency ban. But it shows you that about half the meta right now is going to be ABC. If you're going to a 9-round regional or maybe a 10-round YCS, you should expect to play a minimum of 4 ABCs, and it's shown with the amount of tech that people have run. So this is the deck that took first at Liverpool, and the first thing you guys will probably notice is Cap. This deck is 50 cards, and that could just become the new trend. I think you're seeing a lot of PK Fire players are just well over that 40 range, and I think a lot of it has to do with there are just so many good Burning Abyss monsters, and a lot of them are just main decking so much tech against ABC, because for the most part, to me, it feels like you can't really go punch for punch with ABC. It's just too strong of a deck. When they get that damn Buster Dragon on the field, they're just gonna start banishing your cards, and then they'll start tagging out. And a lot of times if they tag out the second turn, they might be able to summon 2 Buster Dragons, and then the game's pretty much over at that point. So you're seeing a lot of PK Fire players go over 45 cards, or over, you know, well over 40, because there's just so much tech that they want to be able to main deck, you know, cards that can pretty much just blow out the ABC matchup. And if you look at this build, you see that Cherries are in the main deck. By the way, let me just pause on Cherries right here. I think Cherries are going to become a near staple, especially when the Treat Toad Hero deck starts hitting the scene, which is probably going to be like next week when Invasion Vengeance is like fully legal. I think Cherries is just going to become such a big part of the meta, because we all know it's just a complete blowout against ABC. You use it second, they can't do anything about it. There's like no way to stop this card. There's no Solemn Strike set or anything like that. They summon their gadget, they do anything. You reveal a Cherries over, and then they have to spend the entire game without the ABC Buster Dragon. And at that point, they're pretty much just playing a slower version of like Tallarknights. They're just playing a light, you know, like rank 4 base deck, and that obviously hurts them. 3 copies of Chaos Hunter in the main deck and a Vanity's Fiend. So I remember Sam from Team Samurai X was talking about how Vanity's Fiend was just like an auto win card against ABC, and why he decided to main deck some Mirror Force, some Quakings, so that he could out it. And if you just look at the way that people are building their decks now, guys, like Regeki is coming out of the main deck, and it was pretty much for the same reason that I didn't run Regeki and Barrier Statues. I said that Regeki wasn't good going first. If you open with 5 cards and your Regeki is just a completely dead card until your opponent establishes a board, but ideally you want to make sure your opponent doesn't establish a board. You want to warning them or strike them or basically stun them, and make sure that the Regeki is not even a card you need to use. So Vanity's Fiend can really be a win condition against a deck like ABC or against like, Metaphors, a deck that needs a special summon, decks that don't run Regeki have no way of getting this card off the board. We've pretty much been hearing about Chaos Hunter and why this card is good. It was as I thought. You just kind of wait for them to make the Tsukiyumi, and then they kind of committed their normal summon and all their cards into Tsukiyumi. Now in this version, ideally you want to pitch something like Farfa or Alex so that the Tsukiyumi effect never gets off, they lose their materials, or it's negated. And I know this looks like a whole bunch of just like random tech that have to run in a deck just for ABCs, but the reason why all of this junk can work is because Allure of Darkness is at 3. That is the saving grace of dart decks right now. Like I'm running Dart Magician and I'm running Cherries in the main deck, and I'm like, well, at least if it's dead, I can Allure of Darkness it away. And when you have Allure of Darkness plus you have like Pot of Desires, like you're probably gonna open with like at least one of these in your first like 7 cards or so. So even these cards, like if they're kind of dead, if you draw them as like your 6th or 7th card, like they shouldn't really be dead for all that long. And these are just kind of like blowout cards against ABCs. I want to show you guys another top 8 deck from another top 8 PK Fire from Liverpool. And let's look at the fact that, well, first he was running the Kaijus. He went a little bit of a different route, but you'll notice obviously he's running Radion because it is dark. You see the Cherries there, and I almost want to say, as far as like market watch, I advocate picking up Cherries. I know they're $40, but let's be real, guys. They just came out of Dark Illusion. It's a secret rare. It's not going to get reprinted for at least a year. There is a strong chance that this card could probably go to like $60 maybe, especially when the like the Totally Awesome Heroes hits the scene, and we start using this on Dark Law. We start using this on like the Frog or Bahamut Shark, etc., etc. Speaking of Dark Law, so to me, it seems like Burning Abyss and Dark Law have this like love-hate relationship. They're like the couple that constantly breaks up and then always gets back together. Like they love each other, but it's like it just doesn't really work out. Because have you guys noticed that whenever PK Fire or Burning Abyss has like their backs to the wall, especially in Europe, they always seem to like randomly go to this card against some of the meta decks. Like we saw it when Necros were really big. You saw in Europe a lot of Burning Abyss players started playing Mass Change Second to kind of counter Necros because it just shit on that deck. Like, oh, how much searching are you going to do? How much of your shit's never going to go to the graveyard? It's pretty much the same thing with ABC. You wait for them to activate Terraforming or Union Hanger. They search. You end up taking a card out of their hand. And then if they try and go into an Exceed, all their materials get banished and they'll never be able to summon Buster Dragon. So there's just so much tech being played right now. And I feel like a lot of this tech is going to spill into other decks. Like Cherries is just going to be seeing play all over the meta. And if you're running a Dart deck, you can fit so much of this shit in because Allure of Darkness is just like a bailout card. Like for anybody thinking about running Dark Lords when they come out next month, like I would probably just instantly put 3 Cherries in Dark Lords. You don't need your extra deck that much in Dark Lords. It's a Dart deck. You're going to run 3 copies of Allure anyways. The last deck I wanted to show was the Artifact ABC. This one also got top 8, and I was going to make a video about artifacts and their impact on the meta, but I've already done that like twice before for my channel. I've made a video called Welcome to the Artifact Sanctum, and it feels like artifacts are just making their way back into the meta. I think there are 2 reasons. The first is obvious. You guys know how good Scythe is. Scythe is basically Scythe and Dimensional Barrier are just going to be such good cards because if you go first and you're playing against ABC or you're playing against PK Fire or even a deck like Minerva Sworn, which is an amazing deck, by the way, just to pause on that, amazing deck. It's a shame that only like, I don't know, 5% of Yu-Gi-Oh players can actually play the deck, probably even less than that. But Artifact Scythe going second. If you summon it from Sanctum, your opponent basically is just locked out of the extra deck. I've explained ad nauseum why 1 turn in Yu-Gi-Oh is just it's a fucking lifetime. And with another reason, or the second reason why I think artifacts are so good and why people are starting to bring them back, you're seeing Cosmo and Tellarknight players bring artifacts back into the main deck, is because it gives you protection from Twin Twister. All 3 of these decks I've shown, all of them run 3 copies of Twin Twister, and it just, you feel so much more secure when you can set a copy of Sanctum or you can set a copy of Artifact Scythe, and you just think, okay, if I get Twin Twistered, I'm gonna blow this guy out. Like they're gonna lose a card on board. I'm gonna be able to chain. You know what I mean? I'm still gonna get my artifact on the field. Like and your opponent has to, like, all they need to do is see an artifact card 1 time, and they won't think of, like, they'll think twice about blind Twin Twistering for the rest of the duel. And that's just really good because, especially if you can play like Cosmos and Tellarknights, and you can basically hide your artifacts back with a bunch of other traps like Call to Haunteds and Strikes and stuff, your opponent can never really effectively blind Twin Twist to you, or at least there's going to be a lot more risk than if you weren't playing those artifacts. So just some trends to look out at, or to look at. I don't know about the whole Book of Eclipse in the main deck. I understand why it's a good card. I personally think I like Swords of Concealing Light a little more. I know it's not a quick play. I think it's a little better though. So you guys tell me what you think about this, and what do you guys think about all of this main deck stuff being played? Not just a lot of people out of the extra deck, but just the rape the extra deck. That seems like what the game has evolved into. It's not like either you stun the fuck out of your opponent or you just rape their extra deck. Like you cherries them so they just can't do any of their main deck stuff, or they can't use any of their key extra deck cards, or you just like lock them out with things like Dimensional Barrier or Artifact Scythe. So I don't know. I like the adjustments that people are doing in the main deck. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed the video, thumbs it up, and subscribe if you have not already.